Hi, my name is Miles Newman and welcome to the AGOA Online Staying Engaged session recorded on Tuesday, 31st of August 2021. In this session we're going to cover flag football. We want to find out what is flag football, where flag football is at in Australia and New Zealand, and why you should want to get involved. Earlier this week, I did 2 interviews about flag football. The first was with Russell McConnochie, the General Manager of the New Zealand American Football Federation. And then I did one with Shaun, who is not only a senior official who you probably know, but also the chair of Gridiron Australia. In both cases, I asked them, what's the state of flag football in their respective countries, where they see it going in the future, and what they need from us, the officiating community. Then we'll listen to Mark Looi, our Director of Flag Football Rules and Mechanics, who will give an outline of what flag football is about and the differences with contact football, including a discussion of the realities of officiating flag football from Gavin from New Zealand. We will then finish with an open forum on flag football with our usual banter and some rigour. So, let's get going and stay engaged. Fairly high level probably this year because not many people are doing detailed stuff. But as we were just saying with Bob and a few of the others just a moment ago, maybe once we get some seasons up and running, we can start to do game reviews and we can start to make this a mix between some presentation sessions and some game review stuff that's real life. Okay, first up, an interview I did with Russell McConnochie of New Zealand American Football, talking about flag. Would you care to introduce yourself, please, Russell?
Okay, Russell McConnochie. I'm the General Manager of New Zealand American Football. When I came in, I found that not a lot was being done with flag football, and flag football has none of the barriers to entry that American football, full contact American football has. So we started down the road of we need to get this going in order to get a funnel of membership starting with the younger age groups. We also perceived that there was a market there for it, both with touch football players, a lot of feedback getting that they were tired of touch football, and also from out of the netball environment where women play netball, and it's a similar skill set to flag football. So we think there's a ready market.
How do you feel flag football's going in New Zealand?
Well, in terms of the clubs embracing it, because that's where we started 4 years ago in Wellington with a national tournament, and we had 6 teams, I think. And it grew slightly over the next couple of years, but then we decided to hold it in Auckland, and we had 10 teams just after lockdown last year. In October last year, we played a tournament, and then we played the national tournaments again in March. The following year, we had 25 teams turning up, men, women, and juniors. Where the growth will come from, though, is not through the clubs. I believe the growth will come out of the communities, and we've got to enable communities to have. And where are we going? I think we're going to have well over 30. We'll have more youth teams. We'll have more women's teams. We might struggle for more men's teams, but I'm not worried about that. How are we going? Behind my expectation, but better than last year.
How do your weekend competitions work?
2 forms of weekend competition. One was the Nationals. We played the Nationals with 25 teams over 2 days. 5 fields of play. We had 8 full-time referees. We also have a concept of duty teams. So most of those games would have had one independent referee on the field, and the side judges, 2 of them would have been from the duty team, rostered on at the beginning of the tournament. We also have, as part of the duty team, somebody doing the timekeeping and somebody doing the recording of the score. These games, apart from the finals, are 20-minute halves. But we were having a thing called a quad series where we had 4 tournaments and a finals tournament. Started in Nelson, in the South Island. Next one, 2 weeks later, in Wellington. 2 weeks later, it would have been in Turangi in the middle of the North Island, and then 2 weeks later in Hawke's Bay. And we had 5 to 6 teams in each of those tournaments. 5 games a day, 2 days of games. There were a few walking wounded after that.
Yes, there would be.
Off to the physio and...
How do you see the region developing? I mean, Australia, New Zealand, we see New Guinea making a lot of noise at the moment. How do you see the region developing?
We need to work together. We need to lever off each other to grow. I'd like to see interchange of not just national teams, but almost club teams going. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to move that down the age groups and do that with the age groups as well. A youth team, a youth women's team, backwards and forwards, to give them something to aim at those age groups. Again, the reason is we're in competition with other sports. Other sports are doing these kind of things.
What do you want from the officiating community for flag?
Well, in New Zealand, just more. Just more of them. I think we're lucky in that the group of officials we've got have embraced flag. They'll put their hands up. I got people in Christchurch coming to Auckland. I've got Aucklanders going to Wellington. But this Nationals, I'm going to try a slightly different tack. I'm going to try and incent the clubs to bring 2 officials, non-playing, non-coaching, non-refereeing officials, to the Nationals to be rostered onto games.
So that leads me to a good question, actually, if I may. Do you see the need for a proper training package or program for officials in flag?
Yes. Yes. What we did last year is we produced a manual for the Nationals. And in that manual, we specified the jobs of the 2 guys, the 2 referees who will go on the lines. White hat, we're using, obviously we're using the contact referees for that. So they pretty much know their job. It would help to have training.
Keep it simple.
Yep.
Keep it simple.
It has to be.
Keep it nice and simple.
Because I'm not from the football community, I look at football, I look at flag, and I go, I understand why you want 3 or 4 officials, but if this is to grow in communities, it's got to be able to be officiated by 1. Got a piece of dirt, got somebody who will be the referee, got 10 people, go. Have fun. So no passing. You can do a handoff. No passing. No running with the ball. No, the quarterback can't run. You can't go over the line of scrimmage, because we find with the kids, as soon as they can do that, they try it. One lot tried it and they said, "Nah, turned into rugby." Have mixed teams, and if a girl is a quarterback, they get extra points for a touchdown. If the girl is a receiver, extra points. If the receiver and the quarterback are both girls, great, you're on a winner. But just trying to make it fun, because the rules to me are whatever rules work to get the thing going.
So there's the point of view from New Zealand. The second interview that I've done this last week is with Shaun Dove. Shaun Dove's the chairman of Gridiron Australia, as you'll see in a moment. Also happens to be an official, and most of you probably know him. So let's see what Shaun had to say. So that gives you the New Zealand point of view. Let's have a look at the Australian point of view. Hi, Shaun. How are you? Would you care to introduce yourself for the audience, please?
Look, my name's Shaun Dove. In terms of football, I guess I'm an official, is what I am. I've been a member of the Gridiron Australia board since 2013, and whether it's last man standing or most effective, I'm now the chairman. And yeah, I oversee everything that GA is doing at the moment.
I was talking to Russell McConnochie the other day, and obviously we're talking tonight about flag football. How do you see, what future do you see for flag football in Australia?
Look, there's obviously a lot of room for growth there, and I think there's a number of other opportunities that flag presents us. As we get into developing the sport more, we want to encourage junior players. We want to find a pathway for female players. There's a number of areas around the contact football that are somewhat limited in growth, and we're seeing that around the world as well. In that there's only so much appetite that a lot of places have for concussion-inducing and expensive to play sport. As much as we love the sport, we can quite see quite easily that over the years that it's not growing to the extent that we want.
How do you see the region developing?
Well, I hope it develops a lot, actually, and there are various things that we're looking at doing over the next few years to help the region develop whenever we can. I mean, as you're aware, we've already made available our officiating program for helping out with the region, and with I think the way that we're seeing places like Europe close themselves off, we're far more pivoting towards Oceania as a place where if we want to see international competition, we need to develop and help develop the international region in our local area, from New Guinea, Singapore, French Polynesia, New Zealand, the whole lot.
What do you need from the officiating community for this? Shaun?
Look, I was speaking to Football Canada last week, and they have a similar position and a similar story to what we tell, and that is that their contact officials are great, and they get a lot of good feedback about them. They love what they do, but flag is about a participation game. They need lots of people that know how to officiate flag. And so I guess the easy answer to the question is I need the officiating community to provide me with more officials. But being an official myself, I understand that's easier said than done. And just because you're a passionate contact official doesn't mean that you have any interest in being a flag official. There are certainly opportunities that flag officiating could well present itself in the coming years as part of various international competitions that are going to go off on. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the same official. So what I would be asking of the officiating community is to help us develop the pathway where we can get the officials that we need. And that may well be that we're running a national championships in 3 or 4 years' time around flag, and all of the officials there are not people that are names that we know right now. That could happen, and if it happens, that's great. Like I don't mind that. Just help us get there. We look at things like nominally in 2028 there's going to be a flag at the Olympic Games in LA. And that's probably what will happen, right? Because although it'll need to come in as a demonstration sport, there's enough billionaires in the United States attached to NFL that are going to make that happen. It's going to happen, right? But I don't see the same billionaires lining up to put it in Brisbane. Now, from Australia's point of view as well, I mean, if IFAF are going to be serious about how they do qualifications for said Olympic opportunity, and they say they are, then how many spots are going to go to Oceania? Maybe one. You'd imagine that places that once it's mentioned that there's going to be a fair bit of excitement around the region on how to get in there.
The floor is yours. You're the chairman of GA. What do you want to say?
Look, I think developing flag has proven a challenge in this country. There are small pockets of it around. There are people that are very passionate about it, but there is nothing big that has grown up yet. And there's probably a number of reasons for that. And I think it's largely to do with those that are doing flag don't have any particular ambition to have a national competition. They want to have a flag in their local area or something like that, and they do that, right? And there's an opportunity there for us. We've been, as a sport, struggling just below 5,000 participants for as long as I can remember. Like, we're not growing. And unless we can change the strategy that we approach to getting that growth, and by that I mean at the junior levels, it's not going to change. I mean, we had a great burst, 4 or 5 years ago of getting into women's football. That hasn't turned into much for us. If anything, there are less senior players now on the men's side than there were before. And that's a bit made up for in women's numbers, but overall, things are slowly going backwards. Flag is our opportunity to grow, and juniors, and by juniors I mean 5 and up, is our opportunity to grow. To do that, we need to be able to put together programs that allow us to get these games run properly. It's been said for a long time that bad officiating and bad coaching will drive people away from the sport. But good officiating and good coaching will help retain it and help it grow. And I need a pathway to get both the coaching and the officiating set up such that the sport will grow. Now, we can also look at what GA has to do and what states have to do about putting programs in place about how do we push these programs out into schools and clubs and other organisations, and frankly anyone else who wants to run flag. And there's a lot of people out there that are passionate about the NFL code of the game and would be happy to run a flag or another low contact form of the game, two-handed tag or something like that. So yeah, we need help in getting the officiating side set up.
Thank you very much. I think most probably the thing that came out to me is both are saying they want more officials. I think I actually took out the point where Shaun said, yeah, he knows the pain because he is one himself. But everybody's saying they want more officials. We all know that. We all know that's our biggest problem is numbers. And the second thing is that it's a fairly specialised art, which is why I've got Mark lined up to talk about it. I want to move on to Mark's presentation, and we'll presumably have a little time for a bit further discussion after the end of that. Mark.
Okay, thanks, Miles. I'll only talk for about 10, 12 minutes or so. And as we've already talked about so far, it's something which will be new to a lot of the contact officials. I mean, looking around at the people in attendance here, I've known many of you for 20, 30 years on the field, which I guess kind of dates most of us. But many of the people going into flag will probably not come from this group. And the reason why I think is very, very straightforward. If flag grows the way that GA wants it to, the way that I think it can, we are going to be overwhelmed. We are going to be, we as in those of us, the dinosaurs here, we are going to be the minority. But that doesn't mean that the experiences that you all have won't translate into flag. They do. Officiating any sport, if you are a good official, if you have the right people skills, the right game management skills, that's going to work for you. Bob mentioned earlier, Bob's experience over many years in the contact game made it easy for Bob to pick up flag, even if an hour's notice flicking through a rule book. And that's what I believe we are going to see here. But just going to talk a bit about flag how it differs from contact officiating, what the thoughts, what the philosophies are, and where we might need to move to going forward. 3 things I want to open with. The pace of the game is going to be different. Not necessarily the speed of the game, but the flow, the amount of downtime you have, and the general attitude and atmosphere of the game will be different. More about that shortly. Contact. If anyone tells you in flag you're not going to have contact, well, that's wrong. There's no way you're going to be able to reach and grab the flag without some contact happening. In terms of officiating, it's about managing that contact. Where we're going to see a flag officiating grow from is that in the stage we're at now, in the initial years, the games of flag, I think as Shaun, as Russ mentioned, they are going to start from very much more social level, but as the game develops, as the leagues develop, we are not going to see that the degree of competitiveness between the participants is necessarily any less than what we as contact officials are used to. When I talk about managing the pace, for those of you who have never looked at flag before, we do work on a smaller field. Generally about 50 yards, about half the length and about half the width. So a flag field is about a quarter the size of the normal field we are used to in contact. John mentioned in his question, there are a number of different varieties: indoor, beach, 5-on-5, 7-on-7. Regardless, there are going to be fewer players and less interaction. The game itself is quicker. I think Bob mentioned 20-minute halves is normal for a game of flag. 2 20-minute halves, the clock runs all the time, except in the last 1 or 2 minutes, depending on the rules you're working with. All those things make the pace of the game quite different to what we would be used to in the contact arena. Contact will happen, as I mentioned, and our role, the role of anyone officiating flag, is not to eliminate contact, but to be realistic about managing the contact and to ensure that, as with any game, as we're used to in the contact version of our game, safety comes first. For managing the contact, 2 concepts are perhaps going to be very different to those of us used to the full contact tackle game: right of place and right of way. Without going into the technical details of what they are, basically it's simply saying that someone who's established a stationary position on the field cannot be dislodged from that position, has priority to retain that position, and anyone who is moving in a straight line under certain conditions, either team A or team B, they have right of the way as long as they don't change direction. And that's how you determine whether who was responsible for the contact. But, and say, not the time and place to go into the details of it, but those are concepts that are perhaps going to be the most challenging for us officials who are trying to adapt from the contact game to the flag game will want to deal with. I put this up there, but it's been covered by the questions we've had so far and by Shaun's presentation, so I won't go through that, other than to highlight the one point that has been briefly touched on previously. There is a wide diversity of rule bases out there. There are the IFF rules, there's NFL flag, there's US football flag. There's a whole set of different rules, and at present, around the country, most of the competitions that are running around Australia are using either an adaptation of one of these rules. There's no consistent set in use around the country, and in many cases with local adaptations and modifications. So that's perhaps going to be one of our biggest challenges, to try to move the game forward, to come up with something that can be applied on a consistent basis around the country, not only for the growth of the game, but to make it easier to train, to develop, to qualify, and to accredit flag officials. We have an introductory course on flag officiating loaded up on the AGO Academy. I haven't updated that for a couple of years, but I am in the process of making the changes to it to suit the 2021 IFF rules and the 2021 IFF mechanics. There have been a number of differences from the last set of rules in terms of responsibility for contact and responsibility for avoiding contact. And the mechanics, the officiating mechanics, have also changed noticeably between the 2017 and 2021 versions. So I'll be updating those in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll make it available to everyone on the Academy. What I'm intending to do over the next year or so is to run a number of training sessions over Zoom, not only for current contact officials, but also for new officials looking to move into flag. I've run about 5 or 6 of them so far for club officials in Queensland who have been tasked with officiating their local club flag competitions. So I've had a number of these sessions before. Generally work reasonably well, keep it fairly light, fairly low level on there. If you're interested, you'll also find a number, I think there are 4 training videos out on YouTube from IFF Media that cover the different positions, different officiating positions. I don't think they've been updated to the 2021 rules yet though, so that's just something to be aware of. And of course, if you are interested, just ask around your local leagues and local clubs and find what's going on there. Moving on, where I believe we need to go is we do need a quick start guide to social flag officiating. The one-person crew model, the I'm doing this to help my club or to get a game going in the schoolyards model, but in a way by which we can still promote consistency, and we can give people who are starting off officiating social flag the appetite or the interest to move into the more formalized model. Going on from there, I do want to fully flesh out something equivalent to our current level 1 contact officiating module. The initial sketch I have has it sitting at about 50 to 60% of the length, where we will assume that someone has no experience with contact officiating, but give them the skills, the knowledge, and the principles they need to successfully run a flag game. So a more formalized level 1 officiating program. And finally, penalty enforcement and flag, which you'll all be very glad to know, is about 1/10 of the complexity of penalty enforcement for contact. So it's simple. So that's where I believe we are at, where you can make a start in the flag if you're interested, and what some of the resources that I'd like to make available over the next couple of months to you are. Over to you. Let's talk about it. Questions, comments, thoughts, your turn.
I think that's very much the approach. That it's a pathway into the sport. It's also a sport in itself. Okay.
So Miles, I just had a question for Shaun. Shaun, you alluded to the various organisations out there running flag events in schools and that type of thing, and obviously GA and the state leagues don't have the resources to do it themselves, so they need to rely on these private organisations to do that. One of the, and they obviously have the passion and the expertise and the contacts and the gear and all of those sorts of things. One of the issues I see coming out of that is that they all seem to work with different rule sets. What's GA's view on that?
So we were speaking to sporting schools a few weeks ago about what we can do about tapping into that sort of funding, and what that is. That's a program where schools pick a sport and they apply to Sporting Schools Australia to get funding, which then goes out and brings in the providers to do the said programs. But in order to have that, they have to have a standardized program. So I think that is something that we're going to have to look to build in the next few years, as to how we actually say, right, everyone who's doing stuff and who has a program, that's great, but we need to come to an arrangement where there's one program, if you want to be under this banner at least. And in order for that to be the case, we either have to build the program ourselves, buy the program off one of the providers, or potentially import it from overseas. And there's a few options there. So that we've gradually started exploring all of those, but we haven't gone full tilt at it yet.
Okay, John Boss.
Thanks.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask that question about rules, because are we discussing 5-a-side, 7-a-side? Are we discussing flag football played outdoors on a green field, or indoors in an indoor multi-purpose stadium? There's multiple different ways that this could be a sport can be run. So, I think it needs to be driven from the top down as to having a standardized way of doing it. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with, multiple different types of sports and competition.
Correct. I mean, I think, even at the lowest levels, where with really young kids, flag doesn't even consist of having flags. It just consists of having fun. And, we work our way up from there. And exactly right, John. We do need to get a program in place, but right now the programs are either privately held or overseas, and we're not pushing them out. And yeah, that's something we actually have to start doing.
I'll comment on something that Shaun said, which is really super important. He said the level of competition, the level of play, and the level of officiating is going to be one of the dictating factors of whether this is going to be successful or not. Okay, no one wants to spend some time training for playing a shit show. So the competition has to be good, and officiating has to be good. Another thing that's going to make flag football successful is you got to have exposure, and you have to have opportunity. You can have all the exposure in the world, but it's not going to do any good if you don't have the opportunity to follow through with your desire to go ahead and do it. Right now, frisbee football or disc football is getting a lot more attention than flag football. So here in WA, we have 2 leagues, one run out of on a Monday night, one run on, I believe, Sunday. And because I was recruiting officials, I went to some of both flag leagues just to talk to the officials that were there, which are usually younger people, and was fairly successful. And while I was there, I told them, they asked me if I would officiate. So I said, fine, I've never done flag football before. but they gave me a rule book, which I quickly ran down. And literally, because of the years experience that we all have in contact football, flag football is easy. But we use just one official. The beauty of flag football is it's a friendly game. Everybody it's just a happy game. We have mixed crowds between men and women of all ages, and everyone just seems to have a good time. There's not a lot of tension in the games. If football is going to be elevated up to a more of a competitive level, of course, that's all going to change.
Mark, as a standard, what are you envisaging as a standard crew size for flag football? I know you talked about a one person, and Russell alluded to it too, a one person crew for social and beginners and school and that type of thing. But in regular competition, are we talking a standard 3, standard 4?
In a formalized national state level competition, I do think we would want to aim for 4. The IFF mechanics are 4-person mechanics, with adaptations to go down to 3.
In New Zealand, when we run our flag competitions, we normally have 3 officials, a referee, a down judge, and a line judge.
Mm-hmm.
In New Zealand, the referee is focused on the quarterback. It counts the 7-second pass clock that the quarterback has. The down judge makes sure the quarterback doesn't cross the line of scrimmage, and also is looking downfield. The line judge marks out 7 yards, which in the IFAF rules that we use, the defense can send a pass rusher. They can send 2 pass rushes, but they must be 7 yards back. So that's why that line judge marks out 7 yards before the play. If a defender raises their hand, they have right of passage to a direct path to the quarterback. One other thing with the game is it's really easy from an officiating point of view. You don't have a chains crew to deal with. All of the lines are marked out on the field for first downs. So it is a really good way of grounding new officials. The other thing is there's no 40-second and 25-second play clock. It's just a 25-second play clock. So once the referee spots the ball and the line judge marks off the 7 yards, you start the 25-second clock, and the game clock is constantly running. There's no kicking or punting situations, which make for weird rules. There's no blocking, there's no low blocking. Any kind of contact should be flagged. There are tactics that the offense can use. One is called flag guarding, where they either stiff arm someone's hand away from pulling their flag, or they hold on to their flags. So it is something you have to be conscious of with contact players coming across to play flag. The other thing you'll notice is contact players will lower their shoulders, which is a bit of a no-no in when they're carrying the ball in flag. There's no fumbles, which is another point. The ball becomes dead as soon as the ball hits the ground. So yeah, it's a really fast-paced game. It is really good for contact officials to work on their basics, counting the downs, counting the players, things like catch, no catch, tight sideline catches, things like that.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good insight there, Gavin. I just shared another slide I was working on with one of the modules I was talking about. This is on the IFF, based on the IFF mechanics, just to continue to address one of what Paul was asking. In terms of the crews, the IFF mechanics prescribe a referee, a down judge, a field judge, and if you're using 4, a side judge. So the 2 on the line, on the sidelines, aren't opposite each other, unlike your traditional down judge, line judge situation. In the IFF mechanics, the line judge's side of the field has the field judge 7 yards deep.
So out of interest, Mark, when you have a side judge, where does the side judge line up then? Is he opposite the field judge?
Opposite the field judge.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that's the, as I say, it's the IFF mechanics. So they don't mandate 4, they promote 4. 3 is possible. I have seen a version of the IFF mechanics with a 2-person crew. But I don't believe that's adequate for a proper competition. For a social game, yes. I think we can get away with 2. And as Russ was mentioning in his recorded interview, and as Bob mentioned, you can do it for 1. And I do think that in terms of allowing the sport to grow at grassroots level, we do need to talk about in our training what to do if you're the only person. But if we were organizing officials for a competition, we shouldn't be promoting or trying to aim for 1 or 2.
Just out of curiosity, how's the mechanics of the 7-second shot clock work?
So with the 7-second shot clock, it's basically from the snap, the quarterback has 7 seconds to release the ball.
How do you judge that? Is that a judgment or is that
it's
actually
a judgment?
Okay.
It's a judgment, and normally
you
mechanics.
You have to count it. Yeah, you have to count out loud, so
1,
that the
2, 3, basically.
Okay.
What I did when I was doing that, because there's no direct run by the quarterback, you don't have to worry too much about it. And because you're only certain people are allowed to rush, and if there's no rushing the quarterback and the quarterback can't run, you literally don't even have to watch the quarterback. You can just watch the receivers and the defenders as they go downfield. So I would, as soon as the ball was snapped, I counted in my head as I'm watching all the players participate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 5 was out loud. 5, 6, 7, and at 7, the ball was dead. So the first 5, the first 4 were just in my head, just like you'd be a basketball official counting your time. You're not sitting there counting it out loud as you're bringing the ball down court over the halfway mark. So I found it quite simple, and everyone totally understood. When I hit 5, they had 2 more seconds to.
For the officials, it's important to point out it's not a foul. When the 7 seconds expires, the quarterback is deemed to have been deflagged.
Yeah, no,
it's just a loss of down.
The ball is dead. Loss of down. No penalty.
It strikes me. I took up refereeing touch rugby when I was a rugby referee, and it strikes me again. It's a very simple rule set. It's something you can get in. You can make it a very community based. Somebody wants to have some knock together games. Then we're giving them another mechanism and a way that introduces them to our sport. Because as one of the bits I cut out that Russell said was, the point is we've got a forward pass. They don't in rugby. It's all backwards, and it's just a different sport, and it's easy to get involved with.
Greg, when we did a tournament down here in February this year, irrespective of, we were only working crews of 1 or 2, but there's still a lot of running because the game goes up and down the field all day. It goes from one end to t'other, it's back and forth, and you're still doing a lot of running.
Especially when you're doing multiple games in one day, I'd imagine too.
Yeah.
I did about 30,000 steps when we did the tournaments in Auckland here, both days. Yeah, there's a lot of running around.
There was a version of the mechanics I saw, which I don't necessarily agree with, but basically they had the referee and a back judge, and the referee and back judge should swap roles depending on the way that the game was going.
We brought the crew over for the Waggle in 2018, I think it was. We got the crew in on Sunday, and we went out and we refereed a flag tournament for Sunday afternoon for one of the local universities. And it was very good because everybody was a couple of months out of being on field. So this was good. It was a great fun session. We had a barbecue afterwards, but we got everybody's head into the idea of officiating before we had the competition, before we had our competition start. It was actually, and it was a great bonding thing. And I think we made a bit of money for some barbecue stuff too. So
it is a great way of grounding new officials who are a little bit unsure about maybe the contact game. So it's an easier set of rules to learn, but some basic skills around forward pass, backwards pass, incomplete pass, catch, no catch.
Any final thoughts? And I'll go around to my two speakers who I happen to have online. Mark, you got any final thoughts you'd like to add?
Only to say, hey, everyone really should give it a shot. The competition needs to, and the experiences that you already do have are going to help you pick this up very easily.
Thank you. Shaun.
Thanks for coming. That's it.
I was gonna say, Miles, IFAF actually does the World Championships for flag a lot more regularly than contact, so there's more opportunities there as well.
Yeah. So I mean, there's lots of opportunity. I mean, the point is, and this is the point we're trying to get across, is we may be a bit behind the 8 ball in terms of organised competitions in Australia, but New Zealand's quite well along the path. If any of you are friends on Facebook with, I'm trying to think of his name, who runs PNG, they want to play flag like you wouldn't believe. If you talk to, Shaun and I were talking about this, and we were talking about, how easy it would be to organise kind of competitions, and it leads into other things. So the whole idea of tonight's session was to just raise the consciousness of this. Say it's going to be around. It's going to be at the Olympics in 2028. There's opportunity, and there's plenty of things that we can do. There's going to be we're looking at probably national competitions, regional competitions, and I think it'll be everything from social to highly competitive. So give it a good thought. Be prepared to put give it a chance is the big thing.
And one thing I'll say about that, if any of you do get involved in a local competition or so, and you want a half-hour session with the club officials, or with the volunteered officials in there, just let me know, let Miles know, and I'm sure we can put something together over Zoom for them.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you for that. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and the next session will be in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much. Well, that's all for this session on flag football in Australia and New Zealand. I hope you found it interesting. I would like to thank our participants tonight. We doubled the number from our first session at 19, so let's keep the growth going. We also had a range of participants from Western Australia to New Zealand. I would like to thank our presenters, Russell McConnochie from the New Zealand American Football Federation, Shaun from Gridiron Australia, Mark Looi, our Director of Flag, and Gavin Graham from the New Zealand Gridiron officials. Thanks all. Finally, I remind you that AGOA has an online presence on the web at www.ago.org.au. On Facebook, we're at the Australian Gridiron Officials Association page, The Neutral Zone, and we have our AGOA Training and Development Group. If you're not a member of any of these, speak to your state training manager and join the discussion. Also, we have a YouTube channel, AGOA Videos, which you should already know about if you found this video. In our next session in Staying Engaged, we'll be looking at how to improve your officiating using videos and other tools. In these days of restricted seasons, this might be all some of us have for a while. But even so, they're great tools for the future, and you need to know how to use them to improve your officiating. These sessions are currently conducted by Zoom every 2 weeks, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday nights, and we will create a video of the session and place it on YouTube. If you have any suggestions for future sessions, contact me on Facebook, or my email is miles.newman@ago.org.au. If you enjoyed this session, join us online next time. If you are rewatching the session you participated in, come back next time and bring a friend. My name is Miles Newman. See you next time. Thank you for watching and stay engaged.